Welcome to Lesson 1 of the Stress Management course. A course designed to give you greater peace of mind and clarity about your goals in life. Before we start this course, it is very important that you understand exactly what stress is. Why? Because the most important thing in solving any problem is first being clear as to exactly what the problem is. Only then will it be possible to find solutions. Also, throughout the course, I will constantly be referring back to what it is so that you can fully understand the different methods we are using to counteract it. Sound like a good idea? Excellent. I'm glad you agree. Now, in the introduction to the course, I asked you to contemplate a question. What is stress? And I ask you to write down all the answers that sprang to your mind. I also ask you to think about the physical and psychological symptoms of stress. Now, hopefully you have taken some time out to think about this question and written down your answers, and hopefully they will be something like mine. So let's start with the symptoms. First of all, the physical. The most obvious physical symptom of stress that you have probably noticed is that your breathing speeds up and you breathe much more shallowly in the upper chest. Also, your heart rate increases and you sweat more. Also, your muscles tense up, particularly in the neck, back, shoulders and abdomen. Some people also get headaches and migraines when they are stressed, and quite often they experience digestive disorders too. You may also notice you get ill more regularly and often get colds and infections. Also, a common symptom, especially under severe stress, is that you experience nervousness and shaking. Also, another classic symptom is a clenched jaw and grinding teeth. Now, you may not have all of these symptoms, but I'm sure you have noticed at least a few of them. Right, now what about the psychological side? Well, you have probably noticed under stress you become more irritable and angry. And if you haven't noticed this, then I'm sure your partner and others around you have. You may have noticed yourself becoming more anxious and worrying about lots of things that never bothered you before. After a while, some people also begin to lose confidence in themselves and also find it much more difficult to concentrate. Negative thinking, poor memory and low self-esteem are a few more of the wonderful states of mind that accompany stress. Again, some or all of which you may have experienced yourselves. So now you are able to recognize the symptoms a little more. Can you guess why we experience them? Well, if you haven't figured it out yet, the answer is what is known as our fight or flight response. This is a natural reaction to a real or imagined threat. Now, you may have heard of this before, but do you really understand it and what happens when we do experience it? Let me explain. Now, although you may be thinking that the symptoms we experience when we are stressed are negative, the truth is, without the fight or flight response, the human race and no animal species alive in the world today would be alive. The rare occasions that our lives really are in physical danger, such as stepping out onto a busy road without noticing a car, or placing your hand on a hot stove, the fight or flight response will kick into action without us even thinking about it and save us from danger. Under such circumstances, and when animals are fighting or running for their lives, stress is only experienced for very short periods of time. In addition, animals also have specific mechanisms to release the adrenaline afterwards. Humans, however, tend not to experience it for short periods of time, but rather for days, weeks, or even months. The problem is that the human body was simply not designed to cope with this sort of onslaught. In fact, if we do experience it on a regular basis, it has a negative effect on both our physical and psychological health, which is why doctors estimate that as much as 70% of GP visits are stress related. Yup, I said 70%. Huh? How could that be, I hear you say? Well, let's take a look a little bit further into exactly what stress is doing to your body and mind. Now, when we start to experience stress, whether you come close to having an accident or your boss is breathing down your neck to get a project completed on time, the physical and psychological effects are the same. And it goes something like this. The first thing that happens is your breathing starts to speed up and you breathe more shallowly in the upper chest. Why? Because this pumps oxygen into the blood more quickly and speeds up your heart rate. As soon as our heart rate speeds up, the blood and oxygen can flow around the body much more quickly. Now, as we need to get energy into the muscles to run or fight the real or imagined threat, our body releases hormones such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisone and insulin into the bloodstream. This produces chemical reactions in our bodies that supply it with more energy to either fight or run from our predators, or your angry boss. Also, that tension in the neck, back and shoulders. Well, you know if you have a hose pipe and you squeeze the end, the water comes out much more quickly. That is exactly what happens to your blood vessels. They constrict to allow the blood to flow through them much more quickly, and this is what causes that tension in the muscles around your body. Also, when you are running for your life, one of the last things on your mind is a quick trip to McDonald's for a Big Mac and large fries. So, as our digestive system is not required, the blood and oxygen get drawn away from the digestive tract and pumped around the body to the areas such as the arms and legs that do need it to fight or run. This means that the digestive system will not function properly, and why so many people experience digestive problems as a result of stress. Finally, a little information about hormones. Not only are they responsible for all the communication in our body, but they also affect our emotional state, which is why we become irritable, depressed, anxious, or angry when we are stressed. Imagine, for example, a fox running for its life from a pack of hounds. It is backed into a corner and there is no escape. If that fox doesn't experience extreme rage, it will not fight for its life. It will simply think, okay guys, you've got me, kill me, kill me, kill me, and guess what? End of species. Also, hormones are a vital component for keeping the body in check and in balance, controlling everything from our immune system, body temperature, metabolism, sleeping patterns, and even our cell growth. Now, when our hormones go out of balance, all the communication in our body breaks down, which is why it affects our sleep and our immune system becomes weak. The result is we become ill much more easily, as our bodies are not strong enough to fight off infections and disease. This is why it is so important for us to understand stress and be clear about how we can keep it under control. Now, before we completely demonize stress, there is one more thing you need to know. Some stress is actually good for you. And in fact, having no stress in your life becomes stressful. Sorry, what? Did you just say having no stress in our lives causes stress? Yes, I did. Now, before you start to think I'm completely bonkers, let me show you what I mean. Imagine this is your comfort zone. This is where you feel comfortable in life. Now, for a while, this comfort zone is quite an enjoyable place to be. However, after a while, it can become a little boring because human beings need mental stimulation from time to time. It is in our nature, and our natural instincts compel us to constantly learn and experience new things in life. Although we experience stress in many areas of our lives, just an example, let's relate this to our work. Imagine what it is like doing the same job for the same pay, day after day, year after year. After a while, it would drive you nuts and you would start to lose your motivation because you haven't moved on or up in life. Just imagine if you were still doing exactly the same job now as you did when you first left school. You'd be bored to tears, wouldn't you? And this is when we sink down to what is known as the rust out zone. In this zone, we experience a lack of self-worth, boredom and frustration, and this causes us to feel stressed. So it is important that we are always moving forwards, onwards and upwards, so they say. Just in the middle here, we have what is known as the zone of optimum performance. This is the ideal location that we want to be in. It involves a certain amount of comfort, but also some discomfort from time to time as we step out of our comfort zone into what we call the upper learning zone, to learn new things. But we do not spend all our time in the upper learning zone. We just visit it now and again. This is like having a job promotion, where we have someone there to guide us and support us during the transition. We learn new things, but we have someone to fall back on if we don't understand something. However, if we spend too much time in the upper learning zone, where we are constantly trying to tackle new things, we will find ourselves in the burnout zone. This could be similar to a job promotion where we don't have anyone to guide and support us. Our job description is unclear, we are struggling to cope with the workload and are clashing with our work colleagues because we don't really understand what we are doing. It is when we are in the burnout zone we start to experience these negative symptoms of stress. This is what we mean by long-term stress, and this is what we need to avoid. So, what we really need to understand about stress is 1. Some stress is important in our lives. 2. Too much stress leads to burnout. 3. Too little leads to rust out. 4. Everything is constantly changing, and we must be aware of when we are experiencing too much stress and when we are experiencing too little. So, now you have a better idea about what stress is, for your next homework, I want you to think about just the physical symptoms of stress and write down what you think we can do to counteract them. Just the physical symptoms. The psychological symptoms we will address later on in the course. Also, before you watch the next video, I want you to take a piece of A4 paper, or larger if possible, and split it into 3 columns. In the first column, I want you to write down things that stress me out. For the next 2 or 3 days, I want you to write down absolutely everything in your life, no matter how big or how small, that you find stressful on a day-to-day or weekly basis. There is no right or wrong answers, but just brainstorm everything that springs to mind. So, just to recap, homework before you watch the next video. 1. What can you do to counteract the physical symptoms of stress? 2. Take a piece of paper, split it into 3 columns, and in the first column, write down everything that is stressing you out in your life. After contemplation and completing these exercises, then move on to the next video, Stress Management Lesson 2. See you next time. Have a good week and don't stress. Enjoy your life. For all you know, it might be the only one you have. Until next time.